We're going to head back into the newsroom with John Ralph. And Ralphie, head knocks are back on the agenda again, and the ARC is now involved.
They certainly are. So in February this year, the AFL brought in a new rule which allowed the AFL's concussion spotters to effectively overrule the club doctors and force players off for 15-minute SCAT-6 tests. Now, it certainly happened at times across this weekend, but you can imagine that Essendon got a really rough end of the pineapple. We'll show you that Harry Petty situation and how that played out. So he, of course, basically he was forced to his knees, felt dizzy in the third quarter, couldn't see, couldn't stand. The club now assumes that that is concussion. Now, an hour earlier, he suffered this head knock, chin to head, that likely caused it. He wasn't forced off for a test, and the Demons' view was that he absolutely had no symptoms there. They didn't think anything of it. That's how delayed concussion works. The AFL ARC did not intervene in that situation, even though it did with Noah Answorth in that game. Now, in the Tom Edwards situation the previous afternoon, this was absolutely critical. So Edwards was hit by John Noble. In this instance, 15 minutes to go. Noble got a week's ban. He is contesting it at the tribunal. That's 3:35. A couple of minutes later, he goes to the bench for his normal rotation. He's checked out by the Essendon doctor, who clears him of any evidence of concussion. Goes back onto the ground, and then 5 minutes later, with 5 minutes to go, he is ruled out by the AFL's ARC spotter. His game is done, even though he was cleared a second time of concussion there. So I suppose the question is, if that was Zach Merritt, Brad Scott was already angry, would have absolutely lost his mind in a game that was only a couple of points in it and decided by 9 points in the end. So the question is consistency. We saw Jordan De Goey in gather round copped a knee to the head from his Fremantle opponent. That was one that was not, again, referred to by the ARC. Or the Pies doctor, a quarter later, he suffers a much less severe hit and goes off with a delayed concussion. So, guys, we love the rule. We certainly wouldn't love it, though, if we were Brad Scott. And you just got to say, it's great that they are ruling players out, but they need to do it for every player. As often with the AFL rules, it's all about consistency. What do you think, panel?
Well, let's pick through them. So the Harrison Petty one was alarming. You could see that he was really dazed.
Alarming in what sense?
Well, he just looked like it. It's one of those ones where you see a concussion, you go, oh no, you know it's a bad one there. And that was an hour after he'd had the head knock. And then you go to the Tom Edwards one. And I think it's irrelevant whether it's Zach Merritt, or Tom Edwards. He's been off the ground, Jordan. He's been tested by the club doctor. And then a doctor sitting in the ARC, wherever that is, has then made the call to take him back off the ground.
Who's had no contact with him?
Zero contact.
With the player. I honestly thought that was a bizarre one. I think the Essendon doctors would be filthy with the ARC overruling what they did in person. I think the ARC's there for a reason. It's probably to catch the ones that haven't been seen by the bench, that, you know, if the ball's over the other side and something happens. But
is that not the Petty one in an example then? That's an hour before he suffers delayed concussion symptoms. It's delayed because an hour later.
I think that's hard to pick up, right?
Like, a head knock?
Well, not a head knock, but certainly they would have followed Harrison Petty for a period of time and obviously showed no signs of concussion. And then what we saw on the goal line is quite confronting. But I just think the Essendon one, when the doctor has got the player off in Edwards and did the tests face-to-face and conversed with the player, for the ARC to come over the top and overrule that one, I'd be filthy if I was the Essendon doctors with that one.
What are your thoughts, Hawk, on the outside influence? We have our match day doctors there to do these exact things. Yes, we need the spotters, but it's not a great look for the AFL to overrule and potentially cost Essendon its second win in a row, and a club that's struggling to find 4 points.
Yeah, I'm no lip reader, but I seem to coincide with Edwards. He seemed pretty frustrated when he came off. For me, it's just the length of time that is taken to make the decision. So he comes off, he gets checked. We've got to trust the doctor, and I'm with you. They're there for a reason. They've seen him. They know the player intimately. They know how he behaves. They know his background. Says that he's okay, sends him back out. But then to bring him back off after a period of time, it just seems that we've got this technology, like let's use it straight away, implement it straight away, bring the player off to be checked and do it all at the same time, as opposed to waiting so long to check him or rule him out.
A player's future that may be in some doubt, John Ralph, is Tom Liberatore, who has suffered another head knock.
That's right, and yet his career is not over, and remarkably, he still might play Fremantle on Friday week. And so the concussion that he suffered when he hit the thigh of Patrick Dangerfield was his 6th since 2020. In 2024, he appeared before the AFL concussion panel, 4 hits in 12 months to that stage. But his teammate Aidan O'Driscoll had brain scans which showed damage, and so he was concussed and medically retired after a single head knock, and yet Libers have always come up positive. So he'll only go back to that panel if his symptoms linger. At this stage, he's pulled up reasonably well. He's in the early stages of that protocol. The club will very much take care of him. They won't risk him in any way. But, yeah, they believe it's a standard concussion and potentially he plays the week after next, which is quite extraordinary, but that's the nature of the AFL concussion panel.
Bucks, can you see Tom Liberatore playing after 10 days? It seems unfathomable that a man that's had 6 concussions in 6 years is going to roll back out again in 10 days after what looked like another serious knock.
Yeah, I think, well, my opinion and anyone else that's not there is uninformed. So, in the end, the doctors, as we just discussed, you know, the club doctor is the person who is best in a position to deal with any particular player. In this instance, it's Tom, and obviously will be done with the support of the AFL, and they are erring on the side of caution, absolutely, as they should, which is what we saw with the Edwards decision. But there's still a lot of grey area in this, and we've just got to get it right.
Yeah, alarming for Tom Liberatore and also the Western Bulldogs, who had a shocking run of injuries. You couldn't have picked a worse night for the Western Bulldogs versus Geelong, Geordie, and yourself and Hawk were down there, and I mean nothing went right for them, did it?
No, certainly not on the injury front, and we'd been down to Kardinia Park back in those days and had to face Geelong on a really tough night at a really tough ground. So it's no easy beat to go down there and play. I think after the injuries and even previewing the game, probably the thing that stands out to me, and they've always been lauded for their midfield, and they've always been lauded probably for their forward line. But I think the thing that I want to put under the microscope is their defence, and it was prior to this game as well. So it's not just because of the Lobb and O'Donnell injury, but it's quite stark. So I think when you watch behind the goals and just the attention to detail and the leadership, like, should Rory Lobb really be handing over Shannon Neale to Buku Khamis? I don't think so. Should Bailey Dale, like these are well-experienced players, should Bailey Dale be taking front position on Jack Martin, who mind you had a really good game and was able to run around, then compensate over Brambles. So for me, their defence lacks leadership. It lacks fight at the moment, and I think a lot of these instances, and you watch defences when the ball exits their area, and so once this ball goes outside the D50, what are they doing? I think they've got too many ball watchers in their back end, and not enough ball users and not enough leadership. And right now, once that ball turns over, look at the scrambling. Look at the scrambling by the Dogs' defence to try and compensate for a moment or a period of rest. So the conversation now will come, how do they fill those positions? Lobb might play, O'Donnell might be out for a couple of weeks with a hamstring injury. And I think they've got the answer amongst the group or the assets that they've got.
Who is it?
And I think it's Bontempelli.
Wow.
I think a lot of the conversation would be, well, why don't you put Bontempelli forward now that Darcy's out and what a threat he can be ahead of the ball. I think we've all played with great defenders and great communicators. Rance would have been the one. Vlosten, Luke Hodge, Tom Stewart. So these types are hard to measure, but their stuff behind the ball can compensate for errors that happen further up the field. So they're leaking right at the moment. So I think Bontempelli, a great communicator, a great leader, will command respect in that defensive end, but also a good ball user. So you look at their ball users in their back end and they've dropped away. Bailey Dale was a top 10 player in the league for the last couple of years. He's dropped to 105. So you're not getting much out of his ball use and you're not getting much out of his defensive work as well. So I just think it's a glaring issue. They're stacked in the midfield. They've got depth in that midfield. A Bontempelli to half-back, for me, would change their fortunes going forward.